All right, we're back with Papa Hemingstein. Ernest Hemingway, that is.
I am a fan?
I've turned you. I have turned you successfully.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
I think part of it too is you are now. I'm not gonna say old man. We always get flack from people older than us that we're not allowed to say we're old. But I'm telling
We're
you what,
older at this point in our lives.
we're older. But I'm telling you what, you did not have the arthritis. You didn't have some of the issues. I won't go into private detail, but like as you get older, you can relate to certain things more, right? One of those being the struggling with mortality and the struggling with your own output and longevity, I guess, in life. But what will you be remembered by? And I think this is probably one of the stories that I think tackles some of this and the existentialist dread pretty well.
Agreed. I think that one of the things I realized about Hemingway, in a lot of authors that we've read, is relatability is crucial. And as you've pointed out so many times, when you have assigned readings of something that does not interest you, it's hard to relate. It's hard to enjoy.
I'll tell you what I did enjoy. Whiskey. A lot of whiskey in this story, just to jump right in it. Our boy Harry here is not doing so well, and Helen's worried about him. And all Harry wants is he kind of wants to go out in that flame, and he wants to finish his final writing thing, his finally write, really. And he wants to drink his fire water as his final goodbye, even though Helen says it's not good for him. You can't tell me that we shouldn't discuss what does that whiskey mean in this context.
Is it his vice that we all probably have, whether it is literally alcohol or some other negative thing in your life? Your vice can control you even to the very end, and even when you know it's not good for you.
It could be what you mean. What do you mean by vice, right? Like, many people we know, particularly in today's modern age, who knows what it will be in the future, but we have something that we find to distract ourselves from reality, whether that be a video game, whether that be alcohol and state-dependent learning, whether that be actually, honestly, even just becoming obsessed with work, which on some levels can be bad, but I don't know if you just classify that as vice, right? It's this idea that we throw ourselves at something and it is not the main thing we should be doing, but the reason we throw ourselves at it, well, I guess there could be a lot of different reasons, but at the core, we're kind of dodging being productive on some levels, perhaps.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. It is a distraction from things that are mundane. You jump on social media to avoid doing the dishes. You have alcohol to take a break from reality. You get obsessed with work because you feel successful there and gives you a sense of pride. You get obsessed with the gym, that your body is your temple and that you can see the changes. I mean, there's many different avenues kind of go down. One of the main parts of the story is, for me, the regret piece, right? The vices equal regret, or regret equal vices. I'm not sure which way to go with that, but that does feel very, very crucial, of that these vices cause you to possibly have regret in your life.
Well, it's interesting the spiral Harry goes down, right? Because he's smart enough to know he knows his thing, his cathedral that he should have been going after was writing, right? And I don't think that's too much of a jump, right? Like, a lot of times we view writing as a way of immortalizing yourself, AKA we're talking about Hemingway many, many years after Hemingway's passed around. Like, it is a way of leaving a legacy, right? And I think that's how Harry thinks he wants to leave a legacy on this world. But at the same time, does it really? How well do you actually know the writer? You might revere them, but do you ever know them? Obviously, each person's different. But I wonder if Harry's kind of struggling with that, because what could be the legacy he's leaving behind? Well, it sounds like him and Helen had an interesting relationship, because it comments several times how they did everything together, or they did what the other person wanted. And on some levels, like that almost sounds like a healthy relationship, but then he immediately destroys all the images. Well, I didn't do it for you. I did it for your money or so that I could have comfort to write and stuff like that. It's like it's almost like it made me question, were they really ever happy, or is it just Harry is now currently trying to destroy his one legacy because it was a failed legacy. It wasn't the legacy he actually wanted, which was being a successful writer.
I think it comes back to their relationship. I don't know about you, but I imagined her younger, maybe not significantly younger, but it almost felt like the story alluded to the fact that this might have been Harry's second, third, maybe even fourth marriage, and that these relationships were driven by a money factor, and that's part of his regret, is that he focused on that and not his writing, and that led him down this path. So I don't know. I felt like she might have been younger, and there's this disconnect between them that maybe he resents her a little bit.
I don't disagree with what you said, right? Because resentment's at the core, and I think it's a little bit of her. I think it's a little bit of her money, but I think truly deep down inside, what he really resents, I think, is himself, because he let this woman, this money, everything that he knew he was buying to buy comfort, like he even described himself as like a spy amongst the rich, and he promised himself that he would write about it. Because to your point, we did have those flashbacks that kind of alluded to that he's moved on from women before, always to more and more money. That was probably his plan, to continue to move up or move on and just write about it, because this meant nothing to him, at least so he thought. But then for some reason he got caught up in that comfort, caught up in that ability just to kind of relax in the money. And, maybe I don't know, maybe they were happy for a little bit. Maybe that's just my over optimistic way of looking at it, because he was very destructive. And, what's that word when you're trying to upset someone?
Antagonize?
Antagonize is close. I can't think of exact words, but it was full of like, every time he thought about her, he tried to blame her as opposed to himself for his shortcomings. I'm having a hard time articulating it, but it's like his way of scapegoating being a failure is by blaming her, even though he admits it to himself several times that it's his own fault for not working on his writing.
I think it brings us back to the story as a whole. Why has he gone to Kilimanjaro? What is his purpose here? What does he hope to gain before his death? Or does he hope to somehow survive? Is he hoping to rekindle his relationship? Is he hoping that he will have an epiphany and inspire him and have the time to be able to have his magnus opus of writing? The story, I think, in the setting is very important. There's a lot of pieces that Hemingway throws in here with the drinking, the gangrene, the relationship, to lead us down this path of all the things that we've gone over already, but also that any number of these things could be a tripping point in life. And it is a culmination of all of them that you have to look back and think, it isn't just this one thing. There are so many nuances to life to get to where you are.
I want to go back to your first question there. You said, what's the purpose of this trip? Right? Because there has to be some symbolism there with all these flashbacks to the World War I, to seeing the snow, Christmas time. And to me, a lot of Hemingway's heroes and characters, and actually to a lot of people, it's not like it's just to me, is about how they demonstrate their courage, right? And Harry, they could have spent that bloody money to go anywhere, and they went to a more aggressive area, a more dangerous area, because unless he stepped out of comfort of money and security, in Europe somewhere, he never felt that he was being courageous or had that ability, I think, to be tough and manly under fire, that grace under fire. And I think, like, when we look at the symbolism of snow and almost like these dreams kind of at the end, it gives me these feelings of like somewhere in the area of redemption. I know for the longest time I was like, oh, Hemingway, atheist, atheist, atheist. But there's actually a lot of people that have written, counterintuitively that, well, he was raised religious, and in 19, the whole Catholicism movement, he probably had his foundation set more in Christianity than not. That this idea of salvation and ability to redeem oneself in the acts of all of the, I'm going to say the word sins, but maybe a sin to a Hemingway writer is the lack of courage, the cowardice that he displayed through his life of failing to write about the experiences he promised himself he would write about. I almost kind of like wondered, like, were we going to have like this really violent ending? And I actually was kind of a little bit surprised about how it ended with Hemingway. It was much different than I would have expected with, usually if you look at, the ending of Francis Macomber, you have people that can be very aggressive and faced with sudden and violent endings per se.
Did you like the ending?
You know what? I'm going to get your thoughts on this one. I actually was kind of curious, like, what would have happened if a different writer was writing this? I don't know why, but in my head, I was like, what would happen if Flannery O'Connor wrote this? Like, imagine this ending, this moment of facing redemption. You would have had like the symbolisms of like, when he got gangrene or whatever and was stuck by the thorn, you would have had like he fell down and broke like his necklace, which had a cross on it, like the symbol of the broken faith or something like that. And that you'd have had like a sudden and violent facing the end where maybe like a lion showed up or something like that, something that shows courage, or the Lion of Nazareth, right? Jesus, symbolizing true strength as opposed to his weakness. Like I almost wondered, like, had you had like a team up of sorts, like I actually kind of think I would have liked that type of ending better.
That's fair. I like the ending. He got his comeuppance. He didn't come off, I think, as a bad person or a terrible person, but a life well lived or a life not well lived. They're both a life lived, and he feel like he didn't live his life. He meandered. And I felt like, you get clarity at the end, obviously, of your life, I think. And that's something back to why I enjoyed this story, is there's a lot of relatability. And, as I'm middle-aged and I think about, I don't want to have any regrets, if I get another 40 years, I look back at the last 45 I've had. Harry has this fantasy that he's saved, and in actuality, he does pass away. I like your idea of something that's a little bit more or less violent. I don't know. But I thought that it was appropriate and gives the reader some insight to maybe their own shortcomings and to not live with regret. And if you have a dream, you should go after it.
Yeah, I think no matter how you view Hemingway, the way I took it as a reader is kind of what you were saying, but I might phrase it differently. I would have said, this is actually a very biblical way of putting it even. Don't mean to do it this way, but it is. You're given certain talents in life. And you might be really good at something. You, Crypto, you and I were just talking before we had this talk tonight about your talents and how could you use them better, right? And do we find ways to distract ourselves? To go on the internet and just waste some time, read a book or something like that. Not that I think all reading's wasteful, as opposed to really trying to apply our talents and be the best person and leave the best legacy on this world that we can. That's one of those things that, like, I think Harry shows us those regrets that we hear about constantly, about how they wish they hadn't put off living as opposed to distracting, if that makes sense. Like that's the most powerful message that I took as a reader.
My wife and I have tried to be more in the moment and have less of those distractions, drink less, be on our phones less, just be with each other in the moment and not worry about the past because you can't change the past, but also not be so obsessed with the future because the future's not guaranteed. And I know that's very cliche, but living in the now, I think, is more important ever than now.
Well, How many times do we have to hear that we're in this age of distraction? Everybody marketing, they're fighting for our attention. I mean, think about how far removed we are from Hemingway's time and how applicable that challenge still is. The ability to focus on what is important so that you don't have these regrets and leave an empty and vapid life the way that Harry feels at the end.
I think we've always had distractions throughout life, and maybe we do have more, and there's definitely a really good argument that we have more ever before because of the ease of social media and the internet. But where does Hemingway put a lot of his, heroes on their journey, or anti-heroes? Is they're in nature. They're out, next to God, so to speak, back to those biblical references. They're away from the city, away from other people, trying to find themselves. And I think that that's something that, for me, has become very relatable as well.
All right, well, let's start planning our next vacation. Put off the distractions no more, except for hitting the like, comment, and subscribe button. Of course, you got time for that. But then let's be on our way. What other Ernest Hemingway stories have you read that you recommend? Let us know. We're kind of just journeying about this world, reading stories that we think that matter. Let us know which ones you think do. My name's been Una. Thank you for spending time with us today. Peace.
Peace.